apologies for absence?
None received from Democratic, Chair.
All right, happy for me to sign the minutes held on 20th September. Councillor Marnie, do you want to come in on the matter you were bringing up?
Yes, I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. It's more matters arising really than an amendment to the notes. And basically, I'll read it again very quickly. This is in response to the Surrey Library Trust, who had put a bid in for some land, if you like, at the Glebe Field. It was deemed that they would be informed that their bid was deemed premature, and officers instructed to write to the chair of Surrey and Lavernock Community Library Trust to confirm the same. My question is this. I understand that it took 4 months to reply to them, and only after they'd inquired. Are these really the standards of decency towards people that we expect? And can we have a commitment in the future that nothing of that's going to happen again, please?
Lorna, do you want to comment on it, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Marnie, I totally agree. It was a complete oversight on my part, and I take full responsibility for that. I had drafted the response and put it in my drafts. For some reason, I convinced myself I'd sent the response. And when I went to check last week, having had the an email later on, I realised it hadn't been sent. It was a complete oversight on my part. No excuse at all, other than the fact that we're all incredibly busy, and I have been with the COVID response. So it was just a complete accident and an oversight. So I take full of responsibility, and I apologise profusely to the people involved. Obviously, I did apologise in the response for the tardiness, but you know, to put it on record now, I apologise again for the delay in responding, and hopefully it won't happen again.
Okay, you're happy with that?
Sorry about it, but yeah, thank you for clearing that up. I appreciate things like this happen, but maybe if we can keep on top of that in the future, that'd be tidy. Thanks for your help.
That's fine, thank you. Okay, are you happy for me to sign those minutes? Okay.
Yep.
Fine. Number 3 now, declaration of interest. Anyone? Okay, I have, as the local member for Stanwell Ward, and also a member of the planning committee, I'm going to withdraw myself when we talk about number 8, and then on part 2, number 11. Okay, Land of Myrtle Close, since it is within the ward of Stanwell, which I represent, I feel that I should not take part in that part of the meeting, and I will withdraw, and Councillor Cox will then take over when we discuss those matters. Just a bit of housekeeping then. So what we go when we get to Glebe Fields application coming up, my understanding is that will be dealt with when we're looking at Glebe Fields before we get onto Myrtle Close. Okay, so that's where we are in terms of this. Okay, everyone happy about that?
Councillor Wilson, do I have to declare an interest because I'm on the planning committee as well?
Okay, can we get some James, do you want to come in on that, please?
Not necessarily, but obviously if you are involved in this side of things, then it would impact your ability to be involved from the planning committee side of things. So you, to a degree, I think you need to pick which one you're going to be involved with.
Okay, I mean, I think that's the only advice we can give you, Councillor Drake,
Okay.
in relation to that. Okay. All right, now, if we now move to item 4, which is the application for financial assistance. Okay, okay, Gemma, do you want to start on that?
Yeah, of course, yeah. So this is the application for financial assistance, and it's the second tranche of grant awards for 2021. The grant awards are set out in Appendix A, and the premises on which we award grants are set out in Appendix C to the report, and then a summary of the finances for the financial year are set out in Appendix C. So the proposal in Appendix A is towards £22,000 of grants as part of this tranche. So if I just run through the grants set out in Appendix A, I apologise, the text is quite small in this appendix, but hopefully you've got it in a larger format when it's been sent out to you. So the first application is Actions for Elders, and this is one that's come directly into the Vale, and it's an organisation that's already operating in the Vale of Glamorgan, and the project's called Balanced Lives at Home project, and the purpose is to create and sustain a remote model of support for older people in the Vale of Glamorgan, which is obviously particularly pertinent given the current circumstances. The total project cost £10,500, and they have contributions from a number of other grant schemes. They've requested £2,500, and we're proposing to award the full £2,500. And we've had confirmation of those grant awards, hence why we're proposing to award the full amount without any conditions. The second one, Anon Baptist Church has been
Can we just go through them one by one?
Yes, of course, sorry.
Can we go through, are we all happy to sign that one off? Fine. We go on to the next one then.
Yes, Anon Baptist Church, which is situated in Tonguinlife, recommended by Cardiff Council. This is a community building in Tonguinlife. It's being used for a range of things, and proposals to include a food bank distribution centre and an expanded youth group and IT training suite going forward. They've requested £5,000, the total project cost of £327,000. And we're proposing to award this in principle once confirmation of the other grant awards has been made, and to clarify that that will only be to the one-off capital cost of the scheme.
Are you happy? I think someone raised their hand there for a second. Yeah, Councillor Charles.
No, sorry, raised by mistake.
Okay, anyone else raise their hand? Councillor Drake, did you raise your hand?
I'm just agreeing.
Are you still raise your hand, Councillor Janice?
Yeah, still a mistake, but I do agree.
All right, Jeff?
Yeah, in fact, Gemma covered the point I wanted to make, the fact that there were grants outstanding from other people. We want to make sure that they received those before we supplied our grants. Gemma covered that.
Okay, so we're happy to support that as well?
Yeah.
Yep, good. We now move on to the next one, please, Gemma.
Yep, of course. Cardiff and Vale Scouts. So this is the redevelopment of the Jubilee campsite, which is based in Peterson Super Ely. So the project's 2 phases, and the first phase has been complete. This scheme will obviously benefit Scout troops across Cardiff and the Vale, and also they're looking to maximise the other users for the site, such as youth groups and community groups. They've requested £5,000. Due to the amount of funding available, we have reduced that slightly to £4,000. The total project cost is £22,740, and they've had £18,900 of funding approved of that total.
Okay. Are we happy to approve that as well?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, fine. We now move on to the next one, the Coastwatch Institution. Yep.
Yeah, so this is to purchase some replacement binoculars. I think normally they would be.
Sorry, could
Sorry.
I think I know what that's about.
Yeah. I think normally the organisation would have been out fundraising, but haven't been able to due to the pandemic this year. So looking to purchase some equipment. The total cost is £4,890, and they have 1,200 that they're able to, in their application they said that they'd be able to contribute towards the scheme. Again, given the amount of funding available, proposing towards £3,000.
Okay, happy to support that? Yep.
Yep.
Good, good.
Can I butt in on that one?
Yeah, sure.
Just a thing. I mean, they do fantastic work, don't they? This Coast Watch facility, which I'm delighted that we've got such dedicated volunteers doing that. I assume when it says binoculars, or I don't quite mind, obviously I'm assuming they need very high grade binoculars that cost this sort of money with high grade optics on this. You know, is that the case?
Yes, it is. They have provided a couple of quotes to support their application. So it's not just one quote. I think they've provided 2 quotes to support their application. Yeah, and they are very have to have excellent high grade binoculars in order to be able to see the coastline in full.
That's great. I'd certainly support that. Certainly.
Thank you. Okay, fine, good. So St Cadoc's Church now.
Yeah, and this is one that was awarded back in 17-18, and I think at the last committee, because we haven't had any, we've been trying to get in touch with the church for a number of years on this and haven't had any movement, we withdrew the award. Typically, shortly afterwards, after we wrote to them to advise them of this, we were contacted to be updated that they were proceeding with the scheme. So they've reapplied for the funding, and I've been advised that they've recently been granted planning permission to proceed with the scheme. So it's further along than when we previously allocated the funding. Again, there's a number of donations and funds which have been, we've received a confirmation to support, and they've provided quotations to support the scheme as well. So they're requested £5,000 and we're proposing to award £5,000. Excellent.
Does anyone happy to support that? Yeah, good.
Is this the church that's had a lot of vandalism recently?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
Yeah, because I know they were going to set up CCTV cameras. If it's the same church, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, so they've had a lot of issues over the last 9 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, next one, St Cadoc's Church in Penturk.
Yeah, okay. Again, recommended by Cardiff Council. So as part of their inspection, there's been a number of repairs that are identified that needed to be remedied. And the total project cost is £26,110. And they've got, again, a number of contributions to the scheme. And we are looking to award the full £2,000 towards that scheme.
Okay, and I think we've got another one turnover on the page from Vale Cricket Club.
Yes, sorry. Again, based in Ueni Corntown. They're looking to build a new wooden store box and equipment store. And a number of the elements of this scheme are being carried out by skilled members of the team. They're requesting £586.50, so looking to award £500 towards that scheme.
Are we all happy with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, fine. Okay, thank you for that. And we're now moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is the annual report and accounts now.
Okay.
Gemma?
Yes, of course. So this is just bringing the accounts back to committee. Now the independent examination has been carried out by Audit Wales. They've completed their review and they found some minor changes. We were asked to include a comment about the ability of the charity to continue operating, for instance, and there was a rounding error on the cash flow statement, so the figure changed from 6 to 4, I think, or it might be the other way around. So now those amendments have been made, just asking for the chair to be authorised to re-sign the accounts, and then we'll be able to get Audit Wales to add their signature and submit them to the Charity Commission by the end of the month to meet the deadline.
Has anyone got any comments at all on that? If not, I'm happy to sign that. All right. Okay, fine. All right, now move on to investment management review. Now, Gemma, I think.
Okay. So when we met last time, we had an update from the investment managers, Tilney, and we had a bit of a conversation afterwards to discuss the performance of the fund. We discussed the kind of ethical position and the risk level that the fund was placed at, and also the level of investment fees that we were being charged. So I did carry out a bit of a benchmarking exercise and contacted a few of the Welsh Church Act organisations across Wales. Those fund values do vary quite significantly in size. So our fund is about 1.8 million. I spoke to some people whose funds were a few 100,000, and then another organisation whose fund was 12 million. So as you can imagine, their kind of treatment of their funds vary quite significantly. The smaller funds tended to be placed alongside the council's normal investments, so they didn't warrant their own investment manager. Of all the funds that I spoke to, none of them were placed on an ethical standpoint, but in terms of our risk level, the larger funds were placed on a similar risk level. Now, I have included some detail around risk in the report, and this is largely taken from the investment advice for trustees that's on the Charity Commission website. So I think it is important as a trust that we're comfortable with the risk level. I mean, I think given that all the uncertainty in the market, I'm not particularly uncomfortable with the fact that we're at the cautious end of balance. So we're a risk level 3, and there's a bit more detail in the Appendix A that kind of sets out what that is. And then the other element we need to consider is the ethical position of the trust. Now, we were alone out of the other organisations that I spoke to that were Welsh Church Act investors. But I think the ethical and the social and the governance side of investments is really building. And for instance, local authorities now are legally obliged to include commentary in their treasury management strategies about what they're doing to demonstrate that they're meeting those ethical, social and governance considerations when they're placing their investments. So I think certainly some consideration of the ethical position is it could well be a requirement in the future. Now we are allowed by the Charity Commission to place investments on an ethical standpoint, but we have to be able to demonstrate why we feel that we're able to do that. So either that to invest in, for instance, fossil fuels or arms would conflict with the aims of the charity, that we feel like the charity might lose supporters or beneficiaries if it does not invest ethically, or that we don't consider that there's any financial detriment. So I've included some commentary here in terms of I think that we have grounds to continue to invest on an ethical basis. But again, that's something for trustees to consider whether they're comfortable with that going forward. So in terms of next steps, I have spoken to the council's investment advisors, Link, and they have offered to carry out an initial review of the performance of Tilney and prepare a paper for me outlining some alternative options that might be open to the trust going forward. One potential option that came up when I spoke to one of the larger authorities was the use of collective investment schemes going forward. Now, that's one way to ensure that you've got a diversified portfolio without exposing yourselves to the costs of the investment management service that we've got currently. And so it would be useful for us to compare the performance of our portfolio over the life of probably going back to 2016 to what the collective investment scheme's been achieving. When I spoke to Link, they said, given that we have targeted a specific amount of income and then everything over and above that needs to go to capital growth, that we need to do a kind of longer term analysis when comparing our investments to alternatives. So we'll be doing that as well as part of this review. So I suppose rather than a full report, this is an up-to-date report. But I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Marnie.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sure we'll possibly aware of benefits of pooling resources, etc., and whatever. In your case, possibly a suggestion of joining with other funds and whatever other councils. There's also possibly a downside, and as we've seen before, haven't we? I mean, only just recently, on a slightly different angle, the Robin Hood Energy Trust set up by Nottingham Council, with a couple of other councils joined in and stuff, which has gone bust. Basically owing millions and millions of pounds to those people there. I know it's a slightly different scenario, if you like, but I suppose you could lose control of which funds you're investing in. I don't think any of us sure, please correct me if I'm wrong, a high-flying city investment analyst, as it were, but I suppose to a certain degree, we'd all like the most out of everything, but if we're going along as well as could be expected without massive danger of putting anything at risk, we can decide that ourselves. One of the dangers, I don't repeat myself here, is by joining with others that you could get outvoted and possibly dragooned into something that perhaps you're not that comfortable with. It's all supposition, of course, but I'll just put that out there.
Thank you for that, Kevin. Anyone else now? I just got a few oh yeah, Janice, do you want to come on?
Yeah, I agree. I think when it comes to money, we need to be able to manage our own money and say what's being done with it.
Thank you for that. And Jeff, do you want to come in?
Right. Have we looked, or have you considered looking at total investment strategy? So we top slice any of our high performing shares and take the profit out of it and add that to the income.
Well, I think we need to, at the moment, the arrangement we've got is that once the £40,000 income is targeted at, anything else goes into capital growth. So we're legally obliged, aren't we, as you'll be aware, to kind of ensure that we look at the long-term future of the investment and the short-term level of the investment. But I mean, I think one of the things that I've asked Link to consider as part of the initial review is whether that £40,000 split is reasonable going forward, whether we could target more short-term investments without jeopardising the long-term performance of the fund. So I'm looking for some independent investment advice, really, in terms of what our strategy is. And I wasn't proposing, I absolutely agree with the councillors in terms of not giving our funds to anybody else to manage. I think proposing that we continue to have oversight over our funds. It's just whether we look at placing it with an organisation such as CCLA, some of the fund, even not all of it, because of the size of our fund. There's an argument that we've got such because we've got the discretionary management approach, that it's quite high cost, and perhaps it's too intensive for the size of our fund. It's not large enough to get the economies of scale that we would generate with, for instance, a £12 million fund. So that's one of the things I've asked them to look at as well. So I'm hopeful that I'll have those results by the next committee, and perhaps we'll be able to put together an investment strategy going forward that will give us more of a structure.
Janice, did you want to come in because you got a raised hand? I just wondered if you want to bring up something new, or was that an old hand?
That's an old hand. That's what they call me, an old hand.
That's okay, Janice. I'm just thinking there is a suggestion. It's on the report on 2.12 of a further review. I mean, I think that's what we're looking to do, to have a further review. Are we all happy to support that without prejudice? Because I do think, you know, we may end up with the status quo. We may not. We may move forward. But I think a further report with a bit more analysis, looking at possible areas. What was interesting in your report, Gemma, was that on paragraph 2.10.2, 3 and 4, There was nothing about possible interest amounts getting from other authorities, and I think perhaps a bit more detail on the benchmarking on terms of how other funds perform on other Welsh Church Act committees, I think could be quite important to add to analysis. And what do they do? I mean, I know it was interesting reading the report that you did say about the fact is, and there's lots of evidence to indicate that ethical investments do just as well, if not better, than unethical ones. So, and I hear that out as well. It depends how well they're managed, and I think that's part of the issue. So I think if we can have a good insight into the next report when we get that, Gemma, is that okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Fine. Oh, we're happy to sign it off then in that case. Okay.
Chair,
Yes.
Chair, I'm awfully
Yes,
sorry.
sure,
I've had notification from my plumber. He's going to be here in a couple of minutes, so I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave you. I apologise for this, but it's unavoidable.
That's absolutely fine. We quite understand that, Pam.
Trying to prevent a flood.
Absolutely. That's more important at the moment.
Thank you very much, everybody.
That's fine. Okay. I'm going to now move to number 7 now. I'm looking at glebe fields. Okay. I know that Councillor Penrose is, I believe, is present. Are we all happy for Councillor Penrose to make an input? And I understand you'll be available for the part 1 item report. Okay, is that okay, Bob? Are we all happy? Yeah.
Yeah, fine. Thank you very much. Yes, what it is, I'm quite conscious of the fact that some time has elapsed since the Surrey and Lavernock Community Library Trust put forward its first expression of interest, and that's through nobody's fault other than time. There's been change of administration, change of the makeup of your committee, change of chair, then COVID. So a couple of years have gone by and things have changed. So I thought if I made chair as a trustee of the library, I'd just reiterate what the expression of interest was originally. It was then modified, and then to give a summary of where we are today. The original expression of interest was for the whole of the glebe fields to be purchased by the Surrey and Lavernock Community Library Trust on behalf of the community of Surrey by setting up a community interest company, which would be owned by the people of Surrey. I won't go into all the details and strings of that, but that was the situation. The plan was to put an extension to the library along with a doctor's surgery and associated parts, a car park, and 25 retirement bungalows. The next time we were asked to go for expression of interest, if you recall, Education Department came in and they were looking at the largest percentage of the site for 2 schools. That, I think the timing went out of the window. They couldn't wait and they've looked somewhere else. But what they left us in the situation that we were only bidding for the remainder of the land over and above what the Education Department had stipulated. We would now like the committee to consider, and I'm not looking for an answer in it, but just to put it clearly, going back to the original expression of interest, and that is to look at selling the land at agricultural rates to the Community Library Trust, but with the clause of overage, which for those of you not familiar with that, I'm sure you are, Chair, but overage is that you purchase it at a price. However, if planning is afforded in the future, then the price for the land is uplifted to the trust. That really takes a degree of risk off the trust, as well as the penalty the trustees could engage by not getting fair value. Our plan on it would be that we would obviously approach the council to look at future LDPs to see if these retirement bungalows could be included. And the reason we say that is that Surrey desperately needs retirement bungalows because they have a lot of people, even older than myself, which is hard to believe, that have very large houses, would like to stay in the village and want to downsize. But we don't have that sort of facility. That is why we think a similar sort of people who would like to invest in a community interest company where they could get a reasonable return on interest. So really, we would like to revert back to exactly where we were originally, and that is to look at that of the purchase of the total site, to look at purchasing at agricultural rates, to cover it legally with overage, such that if ever planning was afforded for bungalows, for houses or whatever, then the Welsh Church Estate Act would reap the benefit then of that increase in land values. And then we would also be making all planning applications and approaching the Vale Council with regard to alterations to the LDB building outside the settlement zone and all the other issues which I'm sure all of us who've been on planning are aware of. Very briefly, that was it. You know, really, I just want to reiterate that. Although I'm an elected member, I won't be staying for part 2, obviously, because of my interest expressed as a trustee of the Library Trust.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Bob. Kevin, do you want to come in?
Yes, I'd like to speak substantially on this, but I would point out that I think I'll leave it for part 2 because I'm sure we'll be straying into areas covered by that nature, and we can discuss what Bob on behalf of the Library Trust has come up with and other issues that I'm still not happy with from previous discussions. So I'll leave it till then if that's okay with you guys.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone want to discuss anything under part 1 or should?
Councillor Wilson, has he frozen for everybody else?
He's gone.
Yes.
No.
Okay. It still says he's online.
Clearly wasn't that impressed with what you had to say, Bob.
Well, I thought it was
Democratic. Are you frozen?
Oh, hello, Councillor Wilson. We can hear you now.
You're back with us.
Hello there.
Hello.
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 Hi, Councillor Wilson. Are we back in real time?
Hello there.
I think what is needed here, we need to speak to our ludicrously named broadband champion for the Vale. I don't know who thought that title, but surely he needs to get to work on this, doesn't he?
Hello, Councillor Wilson. Can you hear us?
Hello there. I don't know what's going on now. Okay. So where were we then? All right.
Councillor Marnie had just said that he wished to address under part 2, and you were asking if the committee had any other further comments under part 1.
Yeah, I did ask anyone any comments under part 1 first before we move on to part 2. Yes, Councillor Penrose.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. One thing which I did omit, and it has been on social media, etc., and I'm not referring anything to the part 2 of social housing, affordable social housing. I would just point out to the committee that with the COG development and the threat of a proposed other development in Cosmerston, I mean, COG development alone will yield 138 affordable housing. And if Cosmerston went online, which is not popular and being opposed by residents at the moment, there would be obviously a similar number, which well exceeds affordable housing. This is why we feel retirement bungalows would be a better option, which is needed by the village. Thank you for the opportunity of speaking. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, I think we're now going to be moving to part 2. Is that okay now?
Could I just get a formal move and second of that, and then for the benefit of the recording, we just
can we
move part 2?
Thank you. Anyone second that? Thank you. Thank you, Jeff.
So
okay,
for the benefit of the recording, we're going to stop recording now, and Councillor Penrose has vacated the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
So to confirm, we have now formally moved and seconded to move back into part 1 to consider agenda item number 8. Councillor Wilson has left the meeting as he declared an interest at the start. So Councillor Cox, as Vice Chair, has taken over. So I'll hand over to Councillor Cox.
Thank you. Agenda item 8. This is the part 1 of the land off Myrtle Close, Penarth. Any comments we want to make on the part 1 of the report before we go into part 2? Or any of the officers got any points to make on the part 1?
The details really in the part 2, Chairman. If everybody's happy to move on to part 2, we can take the detail under part 2.
So everybody happy? We go straight into part 2.
Move part 2.
Right. So if the recording could go off, we'll move into part 2.